Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy back with another Fairmont project video. Today, we're gonna make it steer. On my bench is a manual steering rack. You can't call it a power steering rack. It's gonna require a few special things. One is the manual racks require a different sexter shaft. This one has been modified. I got actually these parts from a deal I did with a viewer out in Washington State. So there is that, but this particular one eliminates the rag joint, and the rag joint is similar to my old setup, which I'm showing you right now. It also has solid mounts to go to the K-member, and I'm going to be using these bump steer tie rod ends. Now, what is bump steer? Let's go over to the car and I'll show you. So bump steer happens as the suspension moves up and down. Sometimes what occurs is the front wheels will either toe in or toe out as it's going over bumps, and that's called bump steer. These tie rod ends that I have help eliminate that. I'll be putting links in the description to parts and things so you can check those out for yourself. I'm faced with my first problem, and that is there is nothing in the car. So meaning I'm starting from scratch. So I need to figure out, one, where the center is on this rack. So where is the middle? Where can I put this up in there and have an equal length on both sides? That's the first thing I need to figure out. This is how I'm gonna do it. I'm going to hook this pair of vice grips up and move the rack all the way over to one side. So there it is, all the way to one side. And I'm gonna count the number of turns. This is nice that this lines up this way, that it takes to get to the opposite side. So 1, 2, 3, and I don't know what to call that because that's from there to there. It's like 3 3/4. That's a little weird. That's gonna be hard to split the 3/4. So that means splitting that in half. All right, so the math says 1.87 precisely if we divide 3.75 in half. So almost 2. All right. 1, almost 2. Where's my 8.7? Maybe right about there. And that looks about even. Because here's what I'm going to run into. It's going to go to the alignment rack after the fact. I want to try to get it in as close as I can. Oh, there's a little damage to that boot there. Oh well, it's just a dust boot, and there's no fluid that's going to leak out. Ha! Some of you might be arguing the whole point about me going without power steering. This is what I got. I'm going to try it. I have camber caster correction plates, which will allow me to adjust caster to a point to where I can make steering easy. A manual rack is not the same as a power steering rack with no power steering. A manual rack is designed to run without the power assist, so it's a different game. So chill. All right, just gonna install the rack with the solid mounts, and then we'll take other measurements. Looks like on this, the big spacers are gonna go on the back here, and they're on an eccentric. See how it's sort of offset like that, which means you can move it around. And the fronts are also on an eccentric as well. I guess that's going to be the tricky part. Trying to coordinate these to where it makes some sense. There's that one. This must be to make small adjustments to get it, get it to fit. Ooh, that is exciting. It's like it's all coming together. I can just run these down. Talk about an easy power steering rack to put in. Can't remember, Brian caught me there. Talk about an easy rack to put in. Now I'm seeing that it's making contact here, right along the side of that. I don't like that. I don't like that it's making contact. And since I can move it around a little bit, I'm gonna see if I can move it that way and get it away from that. Found the perfect tool. That gave it just enough clearance. Now I can slip a little more than a piece of paper in there. I like that better. Going to run these down now that I have them in position. 19s on these. Stupid Speedo cable. Still got plenty of clearance. Here are our parts. Now, this is where it gets tricky. This adjustment, as far as where this end is going to be located, can be adjusted with these spacers. I don't know exactly where to put it. So what I'm going to do is put it at the bottom to start with. And then once it's on the alignment rack, we can do a final adjustment. But for now, I'm just going to do it like this. I really can't do any of this until I've got the engine in there because I don't have the proper weight on the front of the vehicle. I'm just going to run these down for now, and I don't need to tighten them or torque them to spec or any of that kind of stuff because they're probably going to come back off. Now, I need to try to figure out these lengths, and what I've tried to do is locate these spindles in as central location as I can eyeball, but I just thought if I measure from this bolt out to this center line here, I have a pretty good idea. And on this side, it's about 18.5. And on this side, wow, that's a lot more. There's a little gap here, and I imagine it's because these two are off. I'm gonna fix that gap. Maybe it can't be fixed. Maybe that's just the way it is. You know, I just thought of a different place to do my measurement from. I'm gonna go from this bolt out to here rather than this. I think that'll be a better measurement. All right, from this bolt out to here, looks like about 15.25. It's about 15.5 on this side. So I'm just gonna take this side out a little bit. All right, a little under 15.5, a little under 15.5. Well, I have a rough guesstimation of where I want this to land. It looks like I need to come out a bit. Looks pretty good there. Not even gonna bother tightening these all the way down right now. Line up the other side. Wow, it's looking good. Time for the sector shaft. This is a lot easier without the engine in here. I saved my bolt in here, kept it for safekeeping. I'm not gonna be using this steering column, but I'm gonna hook this up for now. The reason I'm not using the steering column is because I'm going into a manual, and that only has it doesn't have this stuff for the selector for the transmission. Anyway, the steering wheel is centered, or as centered as it can be. And I'm just gonna slide this on up in here. Actually, I'm gonna slide it up in this way because it looks like it's centered. it looks like at center I can have the adjustment bolt sticking out that side. Looks like we'll need a little help from something like a plastic hammer. Throw some penetrating oil at it too. You having that much trouble deciding to go in? The thing of it is I have to get this to go in farther than I need it to, and then get it down on here. Although, I could try putting it on there first. Get my splines lined up so that the steering wheel seems straight. It's like it's not long enough. I know. I can hear you now. Well, I know this one worked. Oh, you know what? I forgot. This one has a bad U-joint. I don't want to put this one in there because I remember it would bind every now and again. So I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to go grab the one off the Mustang. Mustang. It's good to have a parts car just laying here. Okay. Will this work? Nope, totally won't. This is why they're different. This is smaller. So it looks like I need parts. Yep, I need parts. And we're back. When last I left you, my sector shaft was too short. I know, that's what she said. I've solved the problem. Check it out. I now have an extension to my sector shaft that I made from some of the pipe in my air system. Yes, that's right, that's a piece of the black iron pipe that's out there. And some of you may have a problem with that, whatever. These are my welds. These are not my welds on the end here. Those were already there, so these were mine. Now, the way I did this was I went over, well, first I cut this shaft in half. Then I went over and got a piece that was too short at the time to go in between these two pieces here. And like I said, it was too short. I couldn't make that fit. So I cut a longer piece and stuck it up on here, cleaned both ends, and I also really cleaned this inner part that goes up into the steering column. And the reason for that is not only did I want to get this in here so it was the correct length, I wanted to make sure that it was serviceable so that I could remove it. And that was the tricky part. So I left this on here loose. I connected this end, I connected this end. Then I just sort of tack welded these two spots into place. Then I undid this bolt and the one down here and moved, and just to see if I could move it off of here, and it just barely clears if I knock this back up in there a little bit, and I'm able to get it up off of the steering rack. The other problem I had was gravity was causing this pipe to lay down a little bit. So had I just welded it up with it just laying in here, it would have sort of had a sort of a hoop, a jump rope to it, because I would have welded it while it was on a low spot. There's just barely a little bit of clearance between this shaft and the inside of this pipe, a couple thousandths of an inch. So what I did was I just held it up like this, and I just tacked it into place so that it stayed centered. And I nailed it pretty good. In fact, I'm very proud of how well that turned out. And yes, it's completely serviceable. It comes off of there. It works great. I think it looks great. I mean, it really fits the car, all welded and mean. But I know you're probably asking the question, Eric, what's it like to steer a vehicle without power steering? It's almost exactly like it's going to be, even with the engine running in the car right now, because there's no power steering. So why don't we go check the steering effort? Is there some effort? Yes, but it's effort that I can live with. I'm also sitting still. I realize I don't have the 600 pounds that's going to be my engine and transmission sitting up in there just yet. But I can steer it. And I'm not moving. Once you move just a little bit, this gets a lot easier. Driving down the road, this will be really easy. I talked about earlier how I no longer have a rag joint. One of the things that rag joint does is it takes away some of the road feel. And because I have a solid sector shaft and a solid mount there now. If I hit like a pebble on the road, I'm probably gonna feel it. It'll almost be like having ESP, but I like it. Like I said, it is a little bit of effort, but not too much effort, and it's just sitting at a dead stop. Now, I know I'll be messing around with a manual transmission and a clutch also. Don't care, love it. But there is one more issue I needed to solve that I'll show you now. When last you saw this, there were no tires or brakes, any of that stuff. All that's been done. And now that I have the steering and everything connected, I found something out when I turned the wheels lock to lock. First of all, there were no locks. All the way over, and I've since fixed it, and yes, I know about the rack boot. I'm already on that, so I will get on that. But with the stabilizer bar in place, you can see this better over on this side. The tire would actually come over and make contact with the stabilizer bar, and that obviously is no bueno. So I needed to address that issue. And then to address that issue, I needed to make what's called steering stops. I needed to limit the travel of the steering so it wouldn't go so far. You'll also notice, and this is probably why this got torn, is this is pretty extended out about as far as it's gonna go. So you don't wanna overextend the rack because stuff like this can happen, and it's just not good for the suspension geometry. So steering stops was my solution. Come check it out. Oops, forgot one more problem. When the wheels were all the way turned over, what would happen is the brake line would come in contact with the moving tire. Now, I've since corrected that problem by bending the bracket that the brake line is connected to up here at the body. But initially, that brake line was rubbing the tire. But with that inch clearance that I have now, I'm much happier. And here's my steering stop, custom made. Once again, that little piece of short pipe that I showed you in a previous picture, I cut it in half, then I took 2 nuts and a bolt that fit through those 2 nuts, welded one of the nuts to that piece of pipe that was still left. Then threaded the bolt and the other nut onto here. So now this works as a jam nut, a lock nut, and I can set this anywhere I want. So I can move it far out or put it in where it is now. And then I welded this to the bottom of this A-frame. And that might actually help the next time I go to put coil springs in, because that'll be something I can pry against. Now it makes contact right up in this area here. That's actually from my wrench when I was turning this. Originally I had the tire on, but then I figured out it was much easier to do with the tire off. But these are steering stops, and I now have them on both sides. And once again, they're adjustable, but these will keep the wheels from turning too far and coming into contact with suspension parts, overstressing the rack boots and the rack itself, and making sure that my brake lines no longer come in contact with the moving tire. Well, I'm glad I was able to take you to the end of the journey, because obviously there was more work to do than just installing the rack itself. You had to get the wheels on, I had to check the clearance of everything. Also, I had to be able to steer it. I'm pretty proud of the sector shaft that I made. I'm also pretty proud of the steering stops that I made, and that's part of hot rodding. It's coming up with the ideas and implementing in them and, well, hoping they work. In this case, I think they work pretty good. As far as steering effort, yes, there is a little more effort. Well, there's obviously a lot more effort than there would be if it was power steering. I'm comfortable with it though. It's not as bad as you might think. This rack is meant to be a manual rack, so it's not like trying to turn power steering that's not working. That is a lot more difficult than what this thing is. Anyhow, if you have questions about any of this stuff, I'm going to put links in the description. I'm also going to put a link in the description to EricTheCarGuy.com, which is where I ask you go if you have automotive questions. Google+, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, if you wish to connect with me socially. Close each of my videos with be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I'll see you next time with another Fairmont video. See you.